Well, the Democrats are working pretty hard at trying to spin everything that is going on, and the leftists all over social media are trying to really spin it such that they can show you a tomato and an apple and convince you they are somehow the exact same thing. And they're doing this especially when comparing the stimulus to a UBI. Right. And we're using two very different definitions here, but they're trying to convince you that it's the exact same thing when it isn't. And before I show you this clip, I want to explain why it is they're doing this, because we understand here on the right that this is a one-time situation based to a very unique crisis. But they are working hard on trying to convince you that the two things are exactly the same, so that after we get through the crisis and we go back and talk about, hey, UBI on an ongoing basis is a bad idea, they can come back and say, oh, you're an unprincipled hypocrite. Your values, you don't have any. What you do and do not support is based solely on what does and doesn't benefit you, and to hell with everybody else. They're trying to position this so that they can try and take some sort of false moral high ground after this crisis is over, without telling you what the huge difference is. So let's go ahead and take a look at this particular clip, and then we'll explain just how dishonest this is.
Americans are now overwhelmingly in favor of left-wing ideas that they formerly were not in favor of. Actually, some of them they weren't in favor of, other ones they were in favor of. But specifically, let's look at the issue of UBI. So on March 2nd, UBI was supported by just 33% of Americans, and it was opposed by 48%. So it was significantly underwater. Significantly. Only 33% supported. March 17th, after this crisis had really taken hold and people are getting laid off left and right, and we got quite a disaster on our hands, look at that. Support 58%, oppose 26%. So now UBI is overwhelmingly popular. Now, you could argue that maybe the American people will only say in a time of crisis UBI should be done. But my response to that is, okay, then we should definitely do it at least in a crisis. I personally would support, what is effectively a Social Security for all check. I would support that beyond just the confines of a crisis. But, now it's obvious that it's necessary, and people have flipped, and now they're totally in favor of it.
That is 100% wrong. First of all, what the Republicans are proposing in a bailout is not a UBI. It's a bailout. All right. So let's take a look at the situation here. When he's talking about UBI, he's talking about, hey, even in a time when the economy is growing, business is booming, unemployment is low, you have all the ability to get up, go to work, earn a paycheck, and work and hustle and to climb up the ladder to increase your income and go off and, take on a second job if you need to. We should still, during that time, provide you a paycheck from the government. Now, the government providing you a paycheck or a universal basic income, the government's not giving you anything. That money is coming from you because the government gets 100% of its money from you, the people, through taxation. What the Republicans are saying is, hey, this is a unique circumstance. That has never happened before. We didn't even see it during 9/11. We didn't see it, during any hurricanes. We didn't see it in the 2008 housing crash, right? We've never seen this before, where the government has stepped in and has forced businesses to close their doors, right? And so this is very unique, unprecedented. And so we're talking about, hey, it's not that you're unwilling to go to work. It's not that you're not going out there, to try and earn a paycheck. It's that, hey, the government is actively stopping you from being able to go to work and earn a paycheck. Now, true, some people are able to work from home, but not all businesses are capable of that because of the industry that they are in. And when even looking at the stimulus package, while Republicans are going off and saying, still asking, how are we going to pay for this? right? We're still asking. We're also saying, hey, this shouldn't be a blank check issued out to everybody. Those people who are able to still earn an income working from home, they shouldn't receive anything because their paychecks are still going. They're still working. But what we are saying is, because the government has actively stepped in and is preventing you from being able to go to work, and the government's actions has cut off your paycheck, we need to find a way to actually deal with that. And since this is ideally a short-term situation, we're saying a one-time check to compensate for the fact that the government is actively preventing you from going to work, is something that we could do, and that we still have the possibility of being able to clean up this mess afterwards by doing some spending cuts in the federal budget, by enacting policies that will allow for, a rapid regrowth of the economy and bring down the unemployment rate rather quickly and get you all back to work. And so we're looking at this as the government is what's preventing you from earning a paycheck. So we need to deal with that. And we have the ability to spread out the damage enough that we can undo the damage later. What he's talking about and what he's trying to claim that there is support for is that ongoing UBI, never ending, regardless of how well the economy is doing, regardless of your ability to go to work, regardless of the fact that you're getting up, going to work, earning a paycheck, the government should still. No, that is still vastly unpopular. That is still a situation in which there is little support. But this whole trying to conflate the two as if there is any comparison between these two situations is something that the Democrats are desperately trying to do, and saying, look at this tomato, look at this apple. They're the same thing. And they're doing this because they want to make sure that after this is all over and they try to bring out these, far left radical ideas that are completely unsustainable in any way, shape, or form, they want to be able to say they have the moral high ground and be able to claim that you're somehow a hypocrite if you no longer support it. Oh, you supported it when you were going to benefit from it, but no. Now that you're well off again and are back and restored, now you want to cut it off to people who would still need it. Oh, you're horrible. You're unprincipled. You're a complete hypocrite. No, we got to stop falling for these left-wing scams, and we can't let the left wing try and set the narrative and gaslight you with these completely false, stories or false narratives or false claims that have no basis in reality. And we've never, at least in my lifetime, had a situation where the government is forcing businesses to close up, lock their doors, and prevent you from being able to actively go into work. And all other crises, maybe they did so in a localized area after 9/11, like New York. But outside of New York, everyone was still, even while the planes, were crashing, and even while we were dealing with the wreckage and cleanup afterwards, outside of New York, people were still getting up and going to work. So there wasn't a bailout needed. And FEMA, and this is what FEMA, is set up for, would go into that area hit by that disaster, whether it was the 9/11 attacks, hurricanes or whatever. They go in and provide assistance to that particular localized area. But this is widespread, countrywide. And, the fallout of this, we have to deal with, right? But this doesn't, mean, as the left is trying to say, that somehow left-wing policies are now popular and everyone supports UBI. That is completely false. And anybody trying to make that claim that this is in any way comparable is just trying to gaslight you, and they have no concern for the truth. They are BS artists like this guy. And I've monitored this guy's channel for quite some time, and he is full of a bunch of BS. And the fact that he's able to gain an audience peddling this complete and utter Bolsheviks, I should say, trying to keep this clean, is utterly amazing and shows a complete and total lack of thought. Because the government gets their money that they're sending out these checks from you. And as they print out more money, they're devaluing the currency. And this is how inflation would happen If we did UBI and all these left-wing policies, it would mean the value of the dollar would completely and totally collapse. Just like in Venezuela. Venezuela was able to, print out a lot of money and give it all to the people. They did, some form of UBI, and what happened? Their currency went to such complete crap that it's barely valuable enough to use as toilet paper. So no, do not go off and fall for this scam that the left wing is trying to push, and do not let them be able to come back later on and try to, take some sort of false moral high ground, trying to claim you're somehow a hypocrite if you do not support UBI after this. Because what we are talking about in the stimulus is not a UBI. It is a bailout to compensate for the fact that the government, in exercising its legitimate constitutional authority to protect the nation, to compensate you for the damage economically that is caused by the decisions. And this whole idea that now conservatives and libertarians all of a sudden support a big, massive government. No, we don't. We still believe in limited government. Now, limited government does not mean no government. No one has ever made the case that the government should be wiped out completely. No one has ever made the case that there should be no government whatsoever. We say limited government, which means there are still some government. And limited government means that the government should be confined to its constitutional responsibilities, which includes the defense and protection of the nation. Whether that's, military defense or defense from a pandemic. We still believe that the government has a role to play in the defense and protection of this country, but that role still has limitations, especially during peacetime. Limited doesn't mean zero, okay? Do you understand this, liberals? Do you understand the complete and total difference here? All right, so the left is going to continue to try and spin and make a bunch of dishonest arguments. Next thing you know, they're going to try and compare a basketball to the Ford Mustang and tell you that they're the same thing. This is how ridiculous that they get. They take two completely unrelated things, try and convince you they're the same, and therefore, if you support one but you don't support the other, you're a hypocrite. They got the moral high ground, and all of a sudden you who are making principled, honest arguments are somehow no longer to be believed because there's the false sense that you are inconsistent, when really you are being consistent and you're analyzing each and every situation for what the truth is, whereas they are trying to conflate all these different unrelated events and trying to convince you that they are one and the same. And you'll see this dishonesty all over the place. And this dishonesty from the left is only going to get worse once we get through this crisis and they try to convince you, well, you supported our policies, in a time of crisis. Imagine if it's effective in a time of crisis, how effective it would be in a time of prosperity. That's only going to get worse. That claim, that false Bolshevik claim, is only going to get worse once we're outside of this crisis. But you got to make sure that you understand the difference, that a tomato and an apple are not the same. But then again, the left making that comparison and thinking it's the same, they also can't tell the difference between a boy and a girl. So I guess in some respect, maybe they are being honest according to their perspective and worldview, because to them, boy and girl, same thing. There is absolutely no difference. So I guess in their delusional, unable to understand basic facts, it becomes understandable that they would conflate two unrelated things and somehow believe they're the same.